Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching. It is the American Doofus Show. Don't be a doofus. We've got this just in. Quote, the FBI Charlotte field office has opened a federal civil rights investigation into the police-involved shooting death of Andrew Brown Jr. Agents will work closely with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of North Carolina and the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice to determine whether federal laws were violated. As this is an ongoing investigation, we cannot comment further, end quote. So there is an FBI investigation underway into the shooting death of Andrew Brown Jr. We know yesterday a 20-second clip of one of the numerous body cams was made available to the family, to certain members of the family, and to their legal representatives. So, as we did last night, we'll keep an eye on what's going on in Elizabeth City throughout the evening. Now, another story I wanted to touch on that needs to be told. I've got several stories that need to be told. I just don't have the time to get them all out at the moment, but we'll get to them. This one, it's a name that that you may not have ever heard that needs to be heard. We know all about Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky. We know about George Floyd. We've heard a lot of names. One name you might not have ever heard is David McAtee. David McAtee, he was known as Yaya. He ran a barbecue stand in Louisville, Kentucky. Some say the best barbecue in the city. He fed police officers often and fed them for free. And on the second night, at the height of the protests in Louisville over the death of Breonna Taylor, David McAtee was killed. And this is some of that story.
Police is came. See, they got the guns. Guns. Oh shit! The police came out. They saw 5 shots. Hey, I saw you hit the shot.
Almost a year ago, David McAtee was killed when Louisville police and National Guard came to clear the parking lot of a corner store across the street from his restaurant.
Oh, he's trying to lay on the ground. He's dying. Put your hands down. Put your hands down and just wait. Oh yeah. All right, I got one suspect prone on the floor. To your left, to my left, is going to be the casualty.
The Louisville Metro Police Department said no body cameras captured the incident. But this previously unreleased body cam footage obtained by Vice News shows the moments immediately after McAtee was killed.
Right now, so we're trying to figure out what's going on.
Has anyone ever given you an explanation for what happened?
No. Nope. That night was the most historical. Like, it was awful. And to be completely blindsided, the crazy thing about it is when me and my son was watching the protest and it was going on downtown or whatever, and I had told my son, he wanted to go down. I said, I'm not going down there. So I get hit by a rubber bullet or whatever. I'm not going down there. And then it turned out to happen at a place where I thought I was safe at my uncle's restaurant. It's crazy.
McAtee, who many people knew as Yaya, owned a popular barbecue joint in West Louisville. It was the sort of place where everyone was welcome.
He was good to the community. Fed everybody. No, he fed the police officers or whatever. I don't have a vindictive against the police officers, but whenever they would come over, I'd be like, oh my God. He's like, make sure they are cool, just be quiet, I feed them. They all right. They look out. They all right. It's gonna be missed though.
I have all they want is a reason. Don't give them one. That's why they need you to come over here. And then you have to be down here. And you have to be down here last night.
At a briefing the day McAtee was killed, the city released security camera footage.
We will now play video and audio that we have available.
LMPD's official narrative, which it's maintained to this day, is that police went there to disperse the last large crowd of protests over Breonna Taylor's death, and that officers returned fire after McAtee fired first. But previously unreleased portions of LMPD's internal investigation obtained by Vice News, along with accounts from multiple inside sources with direct knowledge, tell a much more complicated story, not only about what happened on scene, but also why law enforcement was sent there in the first place. The police department was struggling to contain the fourth straight day of large-scale protests. The city had just called in the National Guard. LMPD was coordinating its response from the city's Emergency Operations Center, a central command post where leadership from LMPD and the mayor's office followed activity through the city's network of surveillance cameras. It was almost midnight, and protests had mostly died down when officers were told to head to 26th and Broadway to clear the lot at Dino's Corner Store.
We were told we're going to go down and assist with the protests and the large crowds.
We waited at 7 normal speed for an unknown amount of time. And then we got dispatched out to 26th and Broadway to disperse the crowd at Dino's.
The decision to deploy to Dino's has never made much sense to the public. The way it looked that night was how it usually looked on weekends. And it was almost 3 miles from the heart of the demonstrations downtown.
Part of the official explanation that they've given is that police went there because they were worried about crowd forming, that they had intelligence that protesters might be heading over there.
That's not true. I don't even understand why they would assume something like that when that's how it is all the time. On certain days, it's always like that. It's nothing new.
As officers went over, Lieutenant Colonel Josh Judah, who was in charge of operations on the ground, called into the command center, according to multiple people in the room. They say he wanted to make sure everyone was watching, and that the message was clear. Check out what we're about to do. Everyone, they said, then turned to the surveillance screens and watched as law enforcement arrived at 26th and Broadway. When officers arrived on scene, people in the lot began to disperse. One officer, Katie Cruz, crossed the street and started firing pepper balls at people gathered at McAtee's restaurant, including several directly at McAtee's niece.
I was still giving verbal commands for her to go inside. She still refused, so I did shoot off more non-lethal pepper balls at her.
But verbal commands do what? Go in, what? I'm fine. We're not on site. We're not in the street. We're not bothering you. We're right here.
The city had just implemented a curfew, but Michelle and her family were on private property. Cruz kept firing pepper balls even as Michelle ran inside.
It happened all so quickly with the female being pulled inside.
My uncle's like, well, make sure it's not such. And I'm like, they are shooting at us. Look at this, they are shooting at us. And from everything just went fast.
McAtee reached out and fired a shot. Surveillance footage appears to show him let off the second one as he was hit in the chest.
I don't think I honestly realized it was the fucking police until after when my uncle came in, because I was glass at it, my ass was burning. When he came in, you know, like I didn't even know he got hit. He just immediately collapsed.
In a matter of seconds, crews, Officer Austin Allen, and 2 National Guard members fired about 18 bullets, according to state officials. LMPD has said there's no body cam footage of the incident because the 2 officers who fired their weapons didn't turn their body cameras on. They haven't said anything about other officers. We know at least one body camera nearby did start recording before shots were fired. And photos taken late that morning by LMPD's Internal Investigations Division identify at least 7 other officers present at the time of the shooting. 3 of them were wearing body cameras, but only recorded footage after the shooting. While SWAT cleared the restaurant, police detained people who were inside, including Michelle.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
They came in there and like the hoods is thrown out and they sitting us, you know, pushing us down and shit. And I'm like, I know my uncle's in the building. So I literally got out the zip, you know, the zip tie thing and tried to run. So, you know, to the building to get back to my uncle. And from there they just snatched me up, threw me in the back of the car, police cop, and I'm sitting there like literally crying. I couldn't believe it.
Little by little, word began to spread about who was dead inside.
No, nothing happened to y'all. No. Can't believe they did that. No way in hell she's right. I don't care what story they give you, G. None of that. This shit went right. There's no way in hell y'all should have let this happen.
Back in the command center, some of LMPD's highest ranking officers couldn't believe what they had just watched, or why anyone had been sent there at all. One source inside the room told us they were sitting there shaking their head, like, what was to be gained by this? Another felt sure it was a power play. At one point they said, even then Chief Steve Conrad, who was in the room, expressed confusion about why anyone had been sent there, saying it looked no different than any other weekend night.
What was the call? What happened? I'm not sure, sir. What was the call?
That sentiment appears to have been shared by people on scene.
Why y'all still on there? What's up, so what? How we fucking with y'all? Wait, listen to me. Y'all listen to me. Apparently somebody was shooting up here. A shooter was in there. Yeah, we don't never got no shit going on over there.
Including Major Paul Humphrey, one of the highest ranking officers to respond to the shooting.
Hi, Tom. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Not too bad. I'm glad we can get y'all in a little something.
Scroll down here too, so.
This ain't nothing but a weekend night, that you know. Yeah, we're good.
The next day, Humphrey participated in a press conference where he pushed the official explanation.
We had dealt with large unruly crowds for several hours throughout the night prior to this incident. And in the downtown central area, we had pretty much had that under control. And the information that we had was this was the last large crowd that we had that was gathering.
LMPD.
You can watch the rest of this at Vice News. I recommend you do. I recommend you always keep an eye on what's going on Vice News. Yeah, this is going to get me a copyright strike. Yeah, I'm not going to make any money off of this, but this has to get out as wide as possible. Actually, you know what the hell? I'm going to go ahead and play the rest of it.
Didn't respond to requests for comment, but in March, Metro Council President David James asked again about the decision to deploy officers to Dinos.
At some point in time, a decision was made to go to 26th and Broadway. Could you tell me how that decision was made to go there?
We were made aware through our cameras and through intelligence that there was a sizable number of people at 26th and Broadway. Our intelligence gave us reason to believe that that may be a possible area where the activity we had just gotten out of the downtown area may be regrouping to.
Multiple police sources, including people inside the command center that night, dispute Judah's explanation. They told us the surveillance team hadn't flagged any activity in the area because they also didn't see anything out of the ordinary, and that there was no intelligence about protests moving to that intersection. One source suggested Judah likely used that word because it sounded official enough that the public wouldn't question it. When James asked Judah if he remembered calling into the command center, Judah deflected.
Oh, Judah, do you recall making a phone call to the command post at that time?
I don't recall. I am sure that phone calls were, I made phone calls constantly throughout the whole weekend. And if we're talking about anything specific to an investigation, I'm not going to go into any of that. Suffice to say that there were many phone calls made over the course of the weekend.
Instead of answering, he cited the ongoing investigations, which the police department has repeatedly used to withhold information. LMPD's investigation, which was conducted with the Kentucky State Police, was completed back in August, but it's been kept from the public for the past 9 months because the federal investigation is still ongoing. Michelle says she hasn't been given any updates. Her lawyer says she wasn't even interviewed by KSP investigators until after officials said the investigation was closed.
What has the past year been like?
Hard. When I go out there, I literally break the everybody. And like I said, me even riding past that brings like flashbacks, like trying to block it out, like I really do. I just hope that they don't sweep it under the rug and, accept what they did.
Again, that's Vice News. Incredible reporting. If you didn't watch Roland Martin last night, you need to go back and watch Roland from 6 to 8, his broadcast last night. Once again, the breaking news of the day, the FBI Charlotte Field Office has opened a federal civil rights investigation into the police-involved shooting death of Andrew Brown Jr. Agents will work closely with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of North Carolina and the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice to determine whether federal laws were violated. As this is an ongoing investigation, we cannot comment further. That is the end of a quote from the FBI announcing that they are indeed getting involved in what's going on in North Carolina with the killing of Andrew Brown Jr. Again, that 20 seconds of a body cam footage from one of multiple body cams was released to select members of the family and attorneys yesterday. And there's a press conference tomorrow scheduled with media who have filed a suit under the Right to Know Act that all of the body cam footage, including the dashboard cam footage and the surveillance cam footage from the light poles, all of that be shown. My opinion is North Carolina is going to fight that all the way. That's just my opinion. I'll get into it more later on tonight. We'll be back live when we'll be back live to cover the protests, make sure nothing happens. I wanted to read something else to you. The U.S. Department of Justice is mulling whether to charge now convicted former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin in connection with a 2017 incident in which he allegedly violently held a 14-year-old boy and used his knee to hold the teenager down for almost 17 minutes. ABC News cited a source in reporting that Minnesota prosecutors had tried in the months leading up to the Chauvin trial to include this video evidence from at least one of his prior arrests to show that there was a pattern, but the judge denied their request. The Justice Department is now reportedly exploring whether to file charges against the ex-cop for the actions portrayed in the video. State Prosecutor Matthew Frank argued in court papers for the video to be used in Chauvin's trial, said the body camera footage in question shows Chauvin's use of unreasonable force towards this child and complete disdain for his well-being. Chauvin also hit him in the head with a flashlight. The video allegedly shows Chauvin aggressively handling the teenager while the now ex-cop was responding to a domestic violence call with another cop in September 2017. According to the report, the teenager was reportedly one of two people accused of assaulting his mother. ABC News reported that the footage allegedly depicted Chauvin striking the 14-year-old's head after he wouldn't comply. Chauvin allegedly struck the teen with a flashlight twice, held the boy's throat. According to the report, he then applied a neck restraint, causing the child to lose consciousness and go to the ground, where he knelt on his back for 17 minutes. So, yes, they do have the autopsy reports. I'm looking over here at the comments real quick before we close this out. They do have the autopsy reports. Andrew Brown Jr. was shot in the arm 4 times and once in the back of the head, according to independent autopsy reports released earlier today. So we will be back tonight. Mr. Black, shalom to you. T-Rex, Knuckles, Salty Granny, Future, Melanin Freight. I appreciate all of you watching. You know I do. I love y'all. Thank you so very much. Talk Black to me. Cassandra, Darlene. Again, all of you watching, thank you so very much. It is appreciated. Without you, I couldn't be doing this. And we're telling things that need to be told. We're talking about things that don't get talked about enough. And I love you all for giving me the opportunity to do that. I will be back later on tonight. If there is a protest going on in Elizabeth City, we will watch it to make sure that it remains peaceful, so that no lies can be told about it, and that if something does happen, that it is documented. Because as you can see, sometimes when you think things are documented, like in body cam footage, you find out that it's really useless because nobody can see it according to North Carolina law. It is not part of public record. It is there to protect the police, not the people, in my opinion. I love you all. We will see you later on this evening. Even if it's just for a brief moment, we'll come on live and make sure everything's okay in the protests. Otherwise, if something happens, we'll be back on here. I love you all. Thank you so much. It is the American Doofus Show. Don't be a doofus. It's a dark world. Try to be a light.